The next man to present is David Minchin, CEO at Helium One Global. They IPO'd an AIM last year, and David has never been busier in his life, I suspect. It's all happening. Helium One Global are a very well followed stock now in London Southeast. If you go on the chat board, you'll see multiple posts every day for Helium One. The company are exploring for helium in Tanzania and have already had a drilling campaign in the Rukwa Basin, which has significantly de-risked the basin, according to the company, according to David. Joining us to discuss this and much more, no doubt, is the CEO himself, the man we were talking about, the man of the moment, David Minchin.
I'm Helium One CEO David Minchin, as Donald said, and I'm here to talk to you today about what remains the most exciting helium project on the public market. We've got a basin of 4,500 square kilometers with surface seeps at up to 10.5% helium. We've had a tumultuous 8 months, as Donald might have said, with you can see on the share chart, we were up significantly pre-drilling. We had a phase 1 exploration campaign which delivered everything that we wanted, except for gas flow. Since then, the share price has dropped to pre-drill levels, but that's despite the significant de-risking which has occurred in this basin. What do I mean by de-risking? For the first time ever, we've got proof of a excellent to good quality reservoir units. We've got quality sealing units, especially at the top crew level. We've got multiple prospective intervals from basement all the way up to near surface. And all of that leads towards a high level of charge within a working helium system. We know this is a system that generates and stores helium in the subsurface. The next step is for us to go out there and make the discovery. All of this points towards an excellent buying opportunity with a share price that's not included any of the de-risking from 2021. And with the start of the exciting phase 2 campaign, with near-term catalysts drilling throughout 2022 and advancing a project towards a discovery. So I'll give a little bit of background for people who aren't familiar with helium. It's available for a broad range of high-value end usage, things which it can't be substituted, and which is difficult to recycle. It's got a number of key growth sectors, mostly in high-tech industries, healthcare, and computing, cloud storage, fiber optic cables, that sort of thing. Because of this, we're expecting quite dramatic growth over the next 10 years, from 6 billion cubic feet to 8.5 to 10 billion cubic feet by 2030. And existing suppliers can't keep up with demand. It's structurally undersupplied. We saw that over the summer when, with a few small plant outages in the United States, there were dramatic shortages, and people had to cut back on their production of semiconducting chips. New primary helium projects are required to meet the demand growth, and that is especially true as we transition from the carbon economy to a green economy, because all these existing supplies was a byproduct of hydrocarbon production, and Helium One has the green differentiator. We have our helium sourced as a byproduct with nitrogen. It's a high-grade primary helium source, 10.6% measured at surface, with a 90% nitrogen carrier gas. That means that we can produce carbon neutral helium. With COP26 less than 2 weeks away, and as we transition from a carbon world to a green world, this is going to make Helium One, which is already a strategically important asset, into an essential asset, as we don't want to turn off the internet as we transition to a carbon economy. Helium One is very significant for this transition. So what is Helium One? The company was founded in 2015 where we secured 100% ownership over 4,500 square kilometers of licenses. We've got three project areas in Rukwa, Nyasi, and Balangida, all of which have got unique geology and large potential for helium. We have a wealth of historic data, which allowed us to calculate an unrisked prospective recoverable helium resource of 138 billion cubic feet. That's the largest helium resource in the world. It's sufficient to provide the entirety of world demand for over 20 years, or more realistic, 10 to 15% of global demand for over a century. So we're talking about something globally strategic. We're talking about something very high grade, up to 10.5% measured at surface. That's between 50 and 200 times higher than anything currently in production. And all with very simple logistics out to the port of Dar es Salaam, and out to market. We've been engaging in phase 1 exploration throughout 2021. This started in February with our 2D seismic campaign that ran throughout April, and throughout May and June we were able to process the results of that. We built up on our historic seismic database and added a wealth of new prospects, including Tai, which was a must-drill prospect based on a very nice looking three-way dip closure. That's where we placed our first hole, which was commenced in mid-June. It was a very good prospect, and we've done very cost-effective phase 1 exploration. Our faith in drilling Tai was rewarded less than a week into drilling, when we had our first helium show in the lakebed formation. We can continue down, finding helium again in the red sandstone formation, which is where the rods parted, and that was actually the start of our troubles. By the end of July, we drilled into the Karoo. We'd seen thick seals. We'd seen good quality reservoirs. We had 5 stacked helium shows. That's helium coming up with the drill muds as we advanced the rods. But we weren't able to test them because of downhole problems. So what went wrong? We had anticipated, based on historical drill data, that we would have a well-consolidated medium porosity reservoir. Now, slim well drilling would have worked in a well-consolidated rock. It's a tight formation. The extra pressure caused by the mud around the bit doesn't cause excessive damage, and you have a very cost-effective exploration tool. What we found, against all expectations, was that we had a good to excellent quality reservoir. Now, this reservoir was unduly affected by slimline drilling because it was unconsolidated. The result is that the high pressure that you get across the face with slimline drilling caused excessive formation damage. It pushed mud into the reservoir. It created washouts, all of which prevented us from running our wireline tools down, and masked the pay zones which we were hoping to identify, and which we had hoped to see beneath an excellent quality seal. Basically, because of better than expected reservoir, we had to pull the plug on our slimline exploration campaign. Well, what that all points to is that we need to come back with a conventional drill rig. So with conventional drilling has much lower pressure across the bit, because you have a wide bit on a narrow rod, which gives you a nice wide annulus. You don't get the buildup of pressure across the bit, and we could drill these unconsolidated reservoirs with that bit. We need to mobilize a different rig to achieve that. So what did we learn out of 2021? Well, we have proof of concept, and that's significantly de-risked the basin. What I mean by proof of concept is that for the first time ever, we've proven charge and migration in the subsurface. We've proven that we have this excellent quality reservoir all the way down through the Karoo. and we've secured rock cuttings for further analysis. We can really properly understand the stratigraphy of the basin, which will help us to plan our future drilling campaigns. Seal was the biggest risk before we started drilling. That's because of a lack of clay in the basin. It's a very sand-rich basin, but also helium is a very elusive gas. What we identified is a very good quality seal, 130 meters thick at the top of the Karoo. But we also found thinner but effective seals at multiple levels above that. All of that is showing that we've got a stacked system with helium shows at multiple levels, running from near surface all the way down to basement. And putting this together, we have, for the first time, proof of a working helium system. That's shown from the mud shows and from the logging that we've got. We do 2.2% helium in the lake bed formation at only 70 meters. That's a very positive indication. We had 1,000 times background level in the red sandstone that wasn't able to be tested because the rods parted in the midst of drilling this helium show. In the Karoo, we've had good quality seal, excellent quality reservoir, stacked helium mud shows. We weren't able to test it because of formation damage. All very challenging, but all very positive. What we have is a basin where we've got helium in places that we never really expected to see helium. Who's ever heard of a helium show as 70 meters beneath a standard heliclastic play? Who's ever heard of 5 stacked sequences within a 5 stacked mud shows within a single formation in the Karoo? All of this points towards a basin with a lot more helium than we had anticipated, and with several new play types and several untested play types, which we need to investigate as part of our phase 2 drilling. So what is phase 2? Phase 2, we've loosely divided these plays into shallow targets and deep targets. Now, deep targets are primarily focused on the Karoo structural play. That is helium trapped beneath the top seal, the 130 meter thick sealing claystone that we identified in drilling Tai-1, looking for similar structures, or indeed drilling the same structure across the basin. Now, to drill deep targets, we're going to need a conventional drilling rig. And we can't mobilize one of those in the wet season, but there's no off switch at Helium One. So what we're doing is we're pushing on with 2D seismic that's mobilizing before the rainy season comes, and that's going to focus on the northern extensions of known helium bearing structures, which we've seen at Tai and in Itumbula. We know that these structures work as a focus for the migration of helium in the subsurface, and so we're expanding our seismic campaign, which in 2021 was limited to just the basin edge, because we only wanted to drill down to 1,200 meters depth with our slimline well. We're now going deeper into the basin so that we can have a slew of targets to complement our Tai target when we mobilize our conventional rig in 2022. Within the top 400 meters are what I refer to as shallow targets. Now, these are based on the intraformational lake bed play, which we identified with drilling of Tai-1 and investigated further with the drilling of Tai-2. And what Tai-2 showed is that the intraformational play, the reservoir with the strong helium show, which we identified as 70 meters in Tai-1, was sealed by conventional heliclastic clay. Now, we've got a basin with a lot of clay in it. If it was done by some unusual salt or volcanic tuff, I might have been concerned, but with a lot of clay, there's a lot of potential for this type of play and this type of trap to be repeated across the basin, and for us to find multiple occurrences of shallow helium. Now, you must remember that helium is worth over 100 times more than natural gas. So whereas a conventional oil and gas exploration team would not go looking for plays in the top 400 meters, for a helium company, this offers a low-cost exploration and a low-cost route into production and eventual development. So we're trying to use geophysical techniques to give us direct gas indicators, and we're focusing on electroresistance tomography and magnetotellurics, but both of which analyze the resistivity of the ground to identify void spaces. Now, ERT grew out of civil engineering. If you're going to build a skyscraper, you don't want to do it above a big cave. So it's to recognize void spaces in the subsurface. I'll point your attention towards the section at the bottom there. Now, ignore the big purple caves, they stand out quite obviously. But you can see the orange horizon marked limestone. Now that is a limestone horizon where the void spaces are filled with gas. And as you go right into the fracture zone, you can see that this orange horizon becomes green because the void spaces in the fracture zone are filled with water. So with Tai-1, which had strong gas indicators in a shallow trap, and Tai-2, which were trap wherever you would a closure, so you didn't have the reservoir in place. We've got the perfect test bed to calibrate our ERT survey, so that we're able to use the responses there to identify void spaces filled with gas, and potentially, hopefully, develop a portfolio of quite shallow targets to be tested with a lightweight drill. A lightweight drill we can mobilize in the wet season, so we'd be looking to get that in Q1 and Q2 of 2022. In the event of a discovery, we have got a very low capex development. We've done a top-level scoping study based on theoretical gas composition from what we're measuring at surface to produce 350,000 MCF a year, which is about 1 truck a day. Each truck contains about $250,000 worth of gas. And the capital cost of that would be about $50 million. With the production wells and wellhead gathering system, you'd be looking at maybe $80 million. Now, this is a modular plant, so you can add a phase 2 train or a phase 3 train. You can also adapt your train for whatever shows we find. So if we find a shallow show, a shallow play, which turns into a shallow discovery, then we could potentially use a scaled down version of the same modular plan to enter production for quite a low cost. This is all to be investigated throughout 2022. And in production, the logistics to port are very simple. We've got 130 kilometers of unmade road between our site and Rukwa and the Tanzania highway. That needs to be run over with a grader to smooth out the bumps. The Tanzania highway, I've spent a lot of time driving up and down that damn road, and it's very good quality, tarmacked all the way from Rukwa to the port in Dar es Salaam. And you can see from the map at the bottom there, the shipping routes out of Port of Dar es Salaam naturally lead us towards the markets in the Far East and Europe, where there is increasing growing demand for helium for high-tech manufacturing, especially semiconductor chips and fiber optic cables being produced in China, Japan, Taiwan, etc. In fact, they're just building a new helium storage facility in Thailand because there is such demand and such instability of supply out to the Far East. That's really where I see us being able to market the majority of our material, and for a good price. So that's us. It's a transformational opportunity. It's time to change the helium market and to focus on a supply which can be part of a green transition. the green economy is coming. Just because we have switched off our petrol cars doesn't mean we're going to be prepared to switch off our cloud data centers, and we need helium as part of this future society. It feeds into the digital revolution. And in Rukwa, because of the size of the project, the high grade, the high BCF in the undiscovered resource, it's got potential to be a globally strategic resource, which can feed in over a century worth of supply. This resource has been significantly de-risked, and I'm looking forward to being able to advance our development and our exploration throughout 2022 as we bring this project towards discovery. Thank you.
Okay, David, that was brilliant. Thank you so much indeed for all that. Let me pick you up on with my first question. You may believe you've de-risked the Rukwa Basin, but some might say that you've only begun to de-risk the basin, given that you haven't actually made your first commercial finds of helium. So what's your response to that, David?
Exploration is an application of science to data, and it's an iterative process. We went out with great expectations, and I really thought we had something with our phase one drilling. All the right indicators were there. However, with the rig that we bought, we weren't able to close the deal. We weren't able to flow any gas to surface. We're able to take everything that we've learned from phase one and apply that into phase two to make sure that we've got the right equipment, the right bit, the right people behind the project to make sure that everything works, and we're actually able to make a discovery this year.
Okay, Paul Jones follows up on that and says, would you drill it again? If you're so sure that you've got so many things right about Taiwan, would you simply just drill more or less in the same place, the same area, and do it right this time and learn so much more, maybe make a commercial find of helium?
Yeah, I mean, Tai is a fantastic prospect, and the way that we drilled it limited our ability to make a discovery. With excellent quality reservoir like that, you can't apply that sort of pressure across the bit. We didn't know we had that type of reservoir. We thought that I suppose it's basically the same as if you're drilling a high grade gold, you'd need to bring a different drill machine, which isn't something that I, as a mineral geologist, is used to. However,
but would you do it again?
Yes.
With the appropriate kit this time?
Yes, absolutely. And I believe that with a conventional rig, I think we've got every opportunity of making exploration success here at Taiwan, and everything is pointing towards it.
Let's take phase two. So what does phase two look like? You've got £10 million of funding. How far does that go? Who will you be drilling with, and where are you in terms of contracting the next drill and so on?
Okay, so we're I mean, the problem with conventional rigs is that the lead time on a rig of that size is normally 6 to 9 months. We're talking with a range of suppliers. We're trying to find something that's got the right combination of cost and availability for us to deliver an effective exploration program in 2022. Bear with us a rather fluffy timeline at the moment. As we contract and develop, we can start to narrow down. And
so that's work in progress, is it, David?
Oh yes, yeah, very much work in progress. And that's really what 2022 is for me. We're not going to pause. We're not going to stop because it's raining. We're going to run our geophysics so that we can advance our portfolio and introduce new drilling targets to complement existing drilling targets, so we can investigate the numerous plays that we have. But 2022 is, for me, really a year about discovery. It's about applying everything that we've learned in 2021 and in the previous 5 years, and making sure that we get it right and we make our discovery.
Okay, Nahid Hussain and Ashley Hibbert both ask the same question. How far does £10 million go? How many drills do you get for £10 million?
It goes a long way when you're tight-fisted as I am. We're financed to do all of this geophysics. We're financed to do the drilling. Would we raise more money so we have a buffer, or so that we can mobilize for more drilling if we have more targets? Yeah, sure. But are our backs against the wall? Absolutely not. We're a well-financed company, and we've got a lot of exploration mileage ahead of us.
Okay, Kevin Bradle asks a reasonable question. What kind of relationship do you have with the Tanzanian government, and are they happy with progress so far?
We've got very good relationships with the Tanzanian government. They've always been very supportive of our project. We maintain regular communications through the ministries. We welcomed the Minister of Mines out to our camp while we were drilling. It's all a very collegiate atmosphere out in Tanzania, and yeah, I highly recommend it as a jurisdiction.
They're used to gas in Tanzania, but probably a lot less used to helium. Is that fair?
This is the first primary helium exploration project in all of Africa, and yeah, it's new for everyone, and that's what makes it exciting.
Okay, Drew McGregor makes a very good point, which you touched on when you talked about shallow traps rather than deep ones. He doesn't actually think that the use of electroresistance tomography, which you were promoting there in your introduction there, and magenta telluric surveys, he thinks that identifying gas trapped in that near surface is not the way to go, because no ONG exploration company does this. They don't use that technology, and he thinks it doesn't work. So he does think it takes investor expectations the wrong direction, though. What's your response, your considered response to that?
Well, I mean, you've got to think that we're not exploring for oil and gas. We're a helium exploration company, and helium is worth 100 times more than the value of oil and gas. So you need to take off your oil and gas hat and think with a helium hat on. Now, if I was looking for standard Brent, I wouldn't be looking in the top 400 meters. You don't have the pore pressure, you don't have the volumes trapped within the same size closure. But for a helium gas that's worth 100 times more, you can potentially find an economic accumulation within the top 400 meters. I think if I did some calculations, and if your reservoir was at 250 meters, you need a closure of about 7 square kilometers to contain a BCF. A BCF of gas is worth between $250 and $350 million, which if your cost to bring into production is only 30 million, that gives you an IRR of over 55%. It's not the grand prize in the same way as the deep targets are, where you could get that same volume in a much smaller size trap. However, it has the potential to be economic in its own right. It has the potential to be a low-cost route into production, and it needs to be investigated. ERT is a very low-cost exploration method.
And the reason that the oilies don't use it is simply the economics are totally different.
Yeah, it's a totally different game. I mean, nobody mines iron ore at 3 grams per ton, but you would gold.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on. Carl Patch wants to know what the current relationship with Mitchell Drilling is. There was a few other questions around Mitchell Drilling. Lay all these things to rest for us, will you please, David?
So yeah, Mitchell Drilling, that we've fulfilled they fulfilled their contract, and we've released the rig. It became apparent that slimline well wasn't going to work in the reservoirs that we had, and so continuing to drill with them would cause more harm than good. That was well understood. That the hole ran considerably over in time with the number of operational difficulties that we had. However, these contracts are paid per meter, so although the time overrun was high, the cost overrun wasn't. So look, I'm very happy with Mitchell Drilling. It didn't work out, but we're both fine now, and I wish them well in the future.
Okay, David Crowley asks what will be the final question. You've got one more minute to go. David Crowley says, David, with the plans you put forward today via an RNS, how long will it be before we need to raise more funds, and by what amount, assuming we're still searching for that discovery? Well, I presume you are still searching by all accounts, so David, don't be like that. And tell us all, David.
Yeah, so we are in the process of identifying and contracting the correct conventional rig. In the RNS and in the presentation, I say that's planning to be on the field Q3 or Q4 of next year. That's a sort of a worst case scenario. Normally these rigs have got a 6 to 9 month lead time. So I mean, I'm hoping ideally to get stuff on the ground June, July, August, the same as we had this year, drilling the sweet spot of the summer season. As I said, we're well financed to do the exploration that we're doing at the moment. We've got £10 million left in the bank. Our backs aren't against the wall for raising capital. It's a very exciting year for 2022, and I think it's going to be really good to go out again with the right knowledge, the right equipment, and make this discovery that we've been promising the market.
David Minchin, CEO at Helium One Global, thank you so much for joining us tonight.